Command will pay special tribute to Colonel Paul D. Dismer on the occasion of his retirement from active duty after 34 plus years of dedicated service to our country. I am Lieutenant Colonel Jess Perez, and I will be your narrator. The presiding officer for today's ceremony is the Director, Command, Control, Communications, and Cyber Systems Directorate, Brigadier General Michelle Hayworth. At this time, we would like to introduce our distinguished guest. Please hold your applause until all guests are introduced. Colonel Dismer's wife, Miss Joy Lynn Dismer. Their children, Paul Jr. and Laura. His parents, John and Mary Ann Dismer. His aunt and uncle, Ken and Nancy Johnson. We would also like to welcome the Commander, Military Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, Major General Heidi Hoyle. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the arrival of the official party and remain standing for the playing of ruffles and flourishes and the singing of the national anthem by Laura Dismer.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Laura. Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel John Mark Sedgwick will now provide the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, Almighty and everlasting God, we give you all thanks and praise for granting us this opportunity to celebrate and commemorate the distinguished career of your servant, Colonel Paul Dismer, this afternoon, as he retires from the U.S. Army after 34 years of dedicated service to you and to our great nation as a U.S. Army senior officer. The strength of our Army, the strength of our nation is our Army, and the strength of our Army is our soldiers, and the strength of our soldiers is our families. And Lord God, we know that you have sustained your servant, Paul, with a gift that is far more precious and enduring than his many years of military service, and that's the gift of his family members who have encouraged and sustained him during his journey of faith as a U.S. Army soldier. Paul has truly been blessed by his wife, Joy, his son, Paul, and daughter, Laura. These family members, along with others who are in attendance today, have served as your instruments of grace to encourage and nurture Paul as he has devoted his life to them and to our nation. We also know, Lord God, that you've placed many Army leaders along Paul's path during his many years of service to shape his development and performance as an exemplary U.S. Army commissioned officer. Heavenly Father, you also established Paul as your chosen instrument to bless and touch the lives of many soldiers and civilian employees during the last 34 years. And we know that his impact as a humble servant leader will continue to positively impact the U.S. Army for many years to come. Indeed, Paul now proudly bears the title Soldier for Life as he continues to serve his country by serving his community. So we humbly pray that you would bestow upon your servant Paul a blessed and peaceful retirement, and that you would grant him many more years of happiness as a husband, father, and friend to so many others. And we pray all of these things in your most holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Laura and Chaplain Sedgwick. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. General Hayworth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome. Oh, they did turn it on. Welcome, everyone. I tell you, what an honor it is for me to preside over Paul's retirement ceremony today. So thank you, Paul. As I told you, this is my first non-Air Force ceremony. So what an honor it is, right, that it's your ceremony. So it really means a lot to me. And thank you all for coming as well, right? It's fantastic that so many people are here in the room, and I know virtually as well, to thank Paul and the entire Dismer family for over 34 years of service to our nation. So thanks. And special welcome to General Hall. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but technically Colonel Dismer still belongs to her, but he's been on loan to the TRANSCOM J6 for the last year and a half. So I'll talk about that a little more. So it means a lot, I know, to Paul that you're here as well. And then I want to start talking about the family, because every airman has a story, every soldier has a story, and so Paul's story starts with mom and dad, and they're in the front row. So I already let Paul's dad know, John, that I was going to talk about you a little bit. So they were both born in Iowa, but left Iowa when you were in the Army as a Chief Warrant Officer 2 Huey helicopter gunship pilot in Vietnam. And so actually was awarded the Purple Heart while he was in Vietnam. And I understand for the state of Missouri, live in Missouri now, is chapter president for the Purple Heart Association in the state. So on behalf of everybody here, just want to thank you for your service as well. And then so when Dad's tour in Vietnam was over, they decided to settle down in Morgan City, Louisiana. And so Paul's dad continued to fly helicopters, this time for the Petroleum Helicopters Corporation. So as you can imagine, flew people back and forth to the offshore drilling platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. So he did that for a while, and then decided to put a little bit of your electrical background to work, so became electrician, and then ended up, I think you had moved to Missouri by then, building ships. So if we have time for a real quick story, I want to share it with you, because sometimes you go to parties or everywhere and people say, share something interesting about yourself that no one would know about you. I don't have any stories. But Paul's dad, he's got a fantastic one that Paul shared with me. So as I said, built ships, right? So one of the last ships he built was Paddle Wheeler, the showboat Branson Belle, that sits on Table Rock Lake in Branson, Missouri. And so understand, it is the largest boat ship that's on a landlocked lake. And so he helped build that. And I thought it was interesting too, when they launched onto the lake, they did it with 2 tons of bananas, right? Instead of oils, because they didn't want to damage the water in the lake. And then what makes it even more interesting is, right, a big investor of that particular boat is the late country singer Kenny Rogers. So what a neat story. I just had to, when Paul shared that with me, I was like, I got to share that, because I don't have any cool stories like that. So you've had a really fascinating life. Great things you've done. So again, thank you. And thank you both for raising Paul the way you did, right? Because this is the man we see before us today. Retired. And I don't think so Paul's got 3 brothers. I don't think any of them are online virtually, but I'll just say, so there's service in the family starting with Dad. All of the boys in the Dismer family have had some service. So his oldest brother, John, just recently retired from the Army as a signal officer. So next in line is Mike, who is also a boat builder, but also served time in the Louisiana Air National Guard as a crew chief for the F-15 Strike Eagle. So, Signal Air Force, we got some good ties there already, right? And then Paul's the next in line. So we'll talk about him a lot more in a little bit here. And then the youngest brother, James, he's a registered nurse in Alexandria, Louisiana. So you can say the whole family has chosen to serve in various ways. And I know they all helped shape you as you were growing up. As I mentioned, so now we'll transition, talk a little bit about Paul a little bit. As I mentioned, so Vietnam tour's over. They're in Morgan City, Louisiana. So that's where Paul was born and raised, went through public schools there. So I'll talk a little about in high school. So he was actually in the band, which kind of surprised me a little bit when I heard that, and played the clarinet. You know, so we asked, if you think about Paul, what instrument he played, most people would not think clarinet, right? Then when he was a junior, he actually was selected to be the assistant drum major. And then as a senior in high school, was actually the drum major. So we had a little informal going, or send off on Monday. So I really tried to talk him into showing us some of those drum major moves. Couldn't get him to do it, but maybe today we can. But so Paul graduated high school in 1987, went straight off to college at Nichols State University, which Thibodaux, did I pronounce it right? Thibodaux, Louisiana. And so like a lot of us, right, going through school, got to help pay the bills. So Paul did work some various jobs. One, he did data processing for a local bank. So he did that at night. So he would sort the checks and do backups of their computer files. Understand, on the weekend, he worked with his dad building boats. And then during the week, he also was a delivery driver for a local chicken restaurant, Danny's Fried Chicken. And that's how he and Joy met. So like a lot of us, right, you're probably thinking they worked together at the restaurant, right? No, much more interesting story than that. So he actually met Joy on a delivery. So he's delivering chicken to her house that Joy's mom had ordered. Joy is the one that answered the door. So Paul says she answered the door. She was in rollers and little to no makeup. No makeup. And Paul was smitten. And so he gets back to the restaurant and starts telling a coworker, he's like, man, I just met this cute girl. And so his coworker says, well, you should call her. You know, it's probably a stalker's dream, right? Job. He's got her address, he's got her phone number. So he calls the house. The trouble was, Paul couldn't remember her name. He thought maybe it was Joyce. So the phone rings, and immediately the coworker grabs the phone and starts talking to somebody on the other end, and then eventually throws the phone back at Paul and says, it's her mom, right? So Paul picks up the phone, doesn't want to be rude, just starts talking. And he says, may I speak to Joyce? Because remember, that's what Joy's name was. And she's like, speaking. And he's like, well, do you have any daughters? And if so, could you name them for me? So Joy's mom starts naming all Joy's sisters and finally gets to Joy. Paul said, that's her. Can I please speak to Joy? And so, yes, of course, may I ask who's calling? He says, I'm the guy who delivered the chicken. So then a little bit later, he hears in the distance, Joy's mom, Joy, the chicken man's on the phone for you. So, as I said, if we had known that, your call sign would have been Chicken Man. I'm just saying. And then the rest is history. So that may have been when Paul first met Joy, but we found out on Monday, Joy maybe had been checking out Paul maybe a little bit sooner than that. Remember, I told you, right, he was the drum major. So she already knew who he was. Yeah. But after Paul made that move, they started dating. The rest is history. They got married in December of 1992. And so Joy, you've been right by Paul's side for this entire journey. And so I'd also like to wish you guys a happy 30th anniversary, because I know this December will be 30 years married as well. And then the twins, Paul Jr. and Laura, they were born in May of 2003 while they were at Fort Lee. So it said the family, you guys were born into the Army, so you didn't have a choice. But so while today we are recognizing Paul's service, we're really recognizing your service and your sacrifice as well, and all the love and support you've given him through 30 plus years. So thank you guys for that as well. Okay, so now we'll focus back on Paul. And I said, kind of where his service starts. So we'll pick back up. He's in college. Still looking for ways to how he's going to pay the bills. So, and he just really enjoyed being part of something like the band. So he decides to enlist in the Louisiana Army National Guard. So he does that. He enlists, it's a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. I have no idea what that is, at the rank of Private First Class. And so with that right, off to basic training and individual skills training at Fort Knox, Kentucky. So this is where, so we have already seen a little bit of Paul's sarcasm and his humor, but this is the first story where it comes out, right? So remember, right, he's basic training. He's a Private First Class. They're out one morning, out in formation, and one of the drill sergeants sees something he wants to yell at somebody about out the window. So the drill sergeant sticks his head out. Well, he hits his hat on the side of the window. It falls to the ground outside of the building. And the drill sergeant says, "Private, I want you to come over here and pick up my hat." So Paul said he was one of the fastest privates at the time, so he runs over there real quick, picks up the drill sergeant hat, hands it back to him. The drill sergeant said, "Private, don't you wish one day you'll get to wear one of these hats and be a drill sergeant?" So Paul thinks. He said, I could take the easy way out and just say, "Yes, drill sergeant." But for those who knew Paul, that's not what he did. He was honest, and he said, "No, drill sergeant, I want to be an officer." So then the drill sergeant says, "Oh, you're one of those, are you? Drop down and start doing push-ups until I get tired." And so needless to say, Paul's push-up count got a lot better after that. So once after your training for that, back to college, and so also about the same time, he decides he also wants to join the Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC, there at the university. And he was able to do that, and they're called the Simultaneous Membership Program, which allows someone to be both in the Guard and ROTC at the same time. So he does that as well. So you can see lots of service there already beginning. And so now it's his junior year in college, and it's time to make a decision. He can either be commissioned as an officer in the Army National Guard, or he could apply for active duty. So he and Joy talk about it. No, she said, "Oh, that's not, okay, maybe you didn't talk about it," but Paul decides he wants to apply to be active duty. And he says, right, if I get it, I'll only do 4 years and we'll be done. Okay, so let's talk about Paul's 4 years in the Army. So graduates from college in 92, yes. And so he gets assigned to the Quartermaster Corps. And I always thought I had heard this about the Army, but I guess it really is true, right? But gets detailed to the infantry branch for his first 4 years. And so with that, off to training to be an infantry officer and airborne school at Fort Benning, Georgia. And so does that, and then off to your first assignment in Berlin. So what a great place to start an assignment, right? So he gets there, he's an infantry platoon leader and then an executive officer when he becomes a first lieutenant. So I won't spend too much time on that, but while he's there, right, so right away he starts to get noticed for his leadership abilities and gets then selected to be the executive officer for the United States Military Community Activity there in Berlin. As you remember, this is in the late 90s, so the Berlin Wall is starting to come down. So Paul is part of the unit to draw down the forces in Berlin and is one of the last folks to leave the unit. So here's another great story, right, while he's there. You can't make these stories up. So as mentioned, the brigade and all the units there in Berlin are drawing down, so President Clinton at the time decided he's going to come over and he's going to award the unit the Superior Unit Award. So as you imagine, so when he comes, it's going to be, he'll give a speech, he's going to actually inspect the troops, and then there's going to be a pass-in review. So that's where everybody, then they march in front of the president. And so as you imagine, lots of practice for this. So as they're forming their battalions, Paul gets selected to be the S1 or the adjutant for one of those battalions. And so, and also, as I said, as you imagine, the President of the United States coming, they have to be in there way early. So they're out there 3 hours before the actual event on an all asphalt parade field. And for Germany, it was a hot day that day. And so their information, and I don't know exactly when that the officer staying as battalion commander falls out, but he falls out. And so, from the back, they quickly come and take him out. So now Paul's standing there near the front. No battalion commander, and there's still going to be the inspection and the pass-in review. So Paul, being as sharp as he is, he immediately jumps up, and he's now the acting battalion commander there. And so as you imagine, so as he says, he's got company commanders behind him, which are captains, right? So first lieutenant up there in the front. And he did fantastic. So I think it really hit him when the president, he went around to do the inspection in an open Jeep. I mean, how far away were you from President Clinton? Yeah, I don't think many of us can say we've been that close to the President of the United States. So that happens, and now it's time for the passing review. And luckily, I think a little bit of your drum major background helped, I think, right? But he had been through so many rehearsals as well, no problem, right? He leads that battalion around, gives all the right commands, eyes right, all of that, right? So luckily, the folks who were the MCs for this event, they were from Paul's unit, so they noticed him step to the front. And so when they actually when his battalion comes up there, they always announce who's leading the battalion. So they say, such and such battalion led by First Lieutenant Paul Dismer, right? And all the other ones are lieutenant colonels. And so Joy probably about shocked. Yeah. But that's a fantastic story, right? That you'll probably tell forever. Your grandkids all the one day. And so once drawing down all the forces in Berlin, so he gets another 2 years in Germany. So they move him over to Würzburg, Germany, where he's also the executive officer, this time for the headquarters and headquarters company of the 3rd Infantry Division, where you're focused on the deployable command and control capabilities as the movement officer. And so as you can see already, you're going to see a trend through Paul's career. Always noticed for his leadership, always noticed for his ability to get things done, right? Executive officer, right? Executive officer in the Air Force, you're kind of doing a lot of admin things. Executive officer in the Army, completely different situation, right? You're helping lead the operations of that organization. So now it's 1996. His 4 years detailed to the infantry branch are done. So now it's time to go get training to be a logistics officer and actually join the Quartermaster Corps. So it's off to Fort Lee for training. And while he's there, he gets promoted to captain. And so first assignment as a logistics officer is to Fort Polk, Louisiana, where you are a supply and service officer for a little while, and then you get selected for company command of the 229th Field Service Company. I'm really proud of how I'm remembering all these Army terms. And so what this unit did, right, they did showers, laundry, and they fixed broken equipment and torn clothing while they were there. So as you can imagine, Paul, outstanding job at that. But at the time, a lot of that equipment was old. They said the washing machines operated with punch cards. I didn't even know there was such a thing, punch card operated washing machines. And then they had these bladders that held water that were really old as well, and they had holes all in them. So when Paul hears a congressional delegation is coming to Fort Polk, Louisiana, he tells the company, put those water bladders up and fill them. They held 3,000 gallons of water each. And so when the congressional delegation sees them, they're leaking water like crazy. But thanks for Paul doing that, right, that unit was able to procure enough money to buy all new equipment. So that's another thing, right? He gets things done. And so I think, a little bit of that, you get recognized. And so when that tour is over in Louisiana, back to Fort Lee, where this time Paul's selected to be a logistics training officer as part of the Logistics Exercise and Simulation Directorate under the National Simulation Center. Pretty big deal, I think, as a captain at the time. So what he's doing is he's developing and testing all the supply and service simulation models, and then actually training different Army units to use them during various exercises. And he said normally those were at the corps level. So fantastic job there. And so while he's in this job, that's where he gets promoted to major. So you're going to see a little trend too. Every time Paul goes to Fort Lee, he gets promoted. Captain, now major, right? So now he's a major. And so he's been a little bit of logistics officer training. So what they do is someone kind of really knows the business, right? Well, let's make him Inspector General. So Paul gets selected to do that. It's back over to Germany with the United States Army Europe. And so this time at Heidelberg, Germany, doing Inspector General. And I think what he's most proud of there, that unit had a huge backlog in cases. They were able to catch up on that backlog and get them all current, and they got lots of accolades for just how impressive the different reports that they did. So I know you're really proud of that job. So you were in there from 2003 to 2005, and so then Paul gets selected to go to school. So it's off to Kansas, to the Army Command and General Staff College. They're at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. So a little bit of downtime for the family for a year. Yep. So enjoyed that, and then after school, off to Fort Hood, Texas, where Paul served as the S3 for the Special Troops Battalion in the 13th Expeditionary Sustainment Command. Right. And so So this is the first time Paul deploys. And so this deployment, first deployments to Kuwait, where basically the unit was responsible for all the flow of logistics into Iraq. And so there at Kuwait, everything would come in on ship. From now SDDC probably delivered those. And then Paul's unit was the one that made sure they got to the right place in Iraq and then doing the things backwards on the back end. And so pretty significant job at the time. So when that job is over, I think you were there about 3 years, I believe, that time. Back to Fort Lee again. This time Paul serves as he's a division chief for the exercises division in that same unit. And this time he's overseeing all the teams that are actually conducting the joint and the Army exercises. So again, Fort Lee, this is where he gets promoted to lieutenant colonel. So was only there for about a year, and then gets selected for battalion command, which I understand was fairly quickly, right? Normally it's a little bit longer time. And so now Paul's off to battalion command, the 541st Combat Sustainment Support Battalion in Fort Riley, Kansas. And so, and then there's several folks in the audience who served with Paul there. Yeah. And so shortly after arriving there, they deploy again. And so this time it's to Iraq. And so what Paul's unit, what they were responsible for is basically all logistics there in Iraq from all the way north to the Turkey, with the border of Turkey, to the west to the border of Syria, and to the east to the border of Iran. So pretty significant responsibility. And I'm sure if you share a beer with him later, he's already lots of great stories from that deployment, right? But fantastic job. So once battalion command is over, gets selected again to be an executive officer. This time they head up to Fort Drum, New York, where he is the executive officer for the 10th Sustainment Brigade. So understand, so you got there and almost deployed again right away. So actually, Joy and the kids stayed at Fort Riley till Paul came back from this deployment. This time it was to Afghanistan. So while, and what he was responsible for was logistics for 3 commands in the northeast and in the capital, Kabul. And so while he was there, that was the time when Pakistan closed the borders to Afghanistan, and so all the fuel had to come in from the north. And so it was a pretty treacherous road. There was a tunnel that had been built by the Russians that was 13,000 feet up. And so every day, they were getting calls about, from DLA Energy, how many trucks are going through the tunnel today? They're like, we have no idea. So Paul, being the person he is, we got to get things done. He gets the signal folks in the brigade we got to figure out how we got to do this. We got to get a camera up there, and it's got to be connected to computers, so anybody can see what's going through that tunnel at any time on their computers. And so after about a month and a couple of trips up to the tunnel, they were able to successfully get a camera up there, connected to the internet through a small satellite terminal, and it stayed up there for several years. So they could see it, in their brigade headquarters, as well as DLA on their ops floor. You could see the picture of that camera at 13,000 feet up on a mountain in Afghanistan. So I know you're really proud of that because nobody thought it could be done. And Paul delivered on that. So now I said, it's back-to-back deployments, Iraq and then Afghanistan. He's a lieutenant colonel, so he gets selected for school again. So get another little bit of a year to recharge the batteries. So he's off to the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So a little bit of trend too, every time he finishes school, back to Texas. So that's what happened in this case, back to Fort Hood. This time Paul he's the G3 for the 13th Expeditionary Sustainment Command. Shortly after arriving there, you get promoted to colonel. Yep, and you can see why, quickly promoted to colonel. And then with Expeditionary in the name, deploys again. So this is his first deployment, so back to Kuwait. Actually was part of the 1st Theater Sustainment Command. I think it was the Operational Command Post Forward. You're doing it there. And so while he's there, this one, right, pretty significant things happening. This is about the time ISIS is starting to gain another foothold back in Iraq and Syria. And so being the senior logistics organization there in CENTCOM AOR, they were the ones that were responsible for having to plan all the logistics to basically reopen up every air and ground line of communication and flow supplies back in. What made it even more challenging, though, is that the amount of forces you could have on the ground were very limited at that time. So they had to get very innovative in working with what the host nation capabilities had and what they could do with contractors. But we know, right, U.S. was successful in doing the counterattack in both in Iraq and Syria, and that's directly contributed to what Paul and that team were able to do. And so this after 3 years at Fort Hood, then he gets the assignment here to Scott Air Force Base. So this was in 2017. And so he's assigned to be the director of the Strategy, Plans, and Policy Directorate in the Military Deployment and Distribution Command, SDDC, Surface Deployment Distribution Command, which now General Hoyle commands. And so I think you were in that job, really focused on war plans, exercising various ports around the world that the U.S. hadn't been in a while to make sure those ports could still handle military cargo. And so pretty significant job as well. And then it was in May of 2020 where Paul gets tagged to do fifth and final deployment, again, back to Kuwait. This time he's the deputy director for the CENTCOM Deployment and Distribution Command there. And so their responsibility was synchronizing all the theater movement throughout CENTCOM. And you remember, so May of 2020, we're really right in the thick of the beginning of COVID. So also had a tremendous job making sure that, as folks were flying around and moving around the different countries, that all the COVID protocols and requirements were met. So he was there until June of 2020, and then a medical issue brought him back home early. And so after a short recovery, right, and he very much thanks General Gus Perna and Major General Steve Farman, who was the commander of SDDC before General Hoyle, for working to allow Paul to stay here at Scott Air Force Base so the kids could finish high school. And I know you guys graduated last year, right, from high school. So very appreciative of that. So Paul, right, he was supposed to be deployed for a year, and so came back a little early. So SDDC had already filled his job. So I think he was doing some special projects for General Hoyle. About that time, so in the TRANSCOM J6, we do not have a military deputy billet. It's a colonel. We don't have a colonel billet. So we're always, whoever we can get to fill that. And we had a vacancy at the time. So I started talking to Major General Kutulich, who was the chief of staff here at TRANSCOM, and I said, "Ma'am, I'm hurting. I mean, I really need a military deputy." And somehow she knew about Paul and talked with General Hoyle. And I think it was maybe about a month later, we found out that Paul was going to get to come join our J6 staff, and General Kutulich was like, "Michelle, he's not a cyber or comm person." I said, "I don't care." I said, "I need a leader," and that's exactly what we got. And I tell you, Paul, if I had read through all your background that you gave me for this, I wouldn't have hesitated. It's like, absolutely, I want him. And as Mr. Hurley said, "Hey, we want two of him." I mean, and I'm not kidding, right? He stepped in. The fact that he didn't have any formal training in comm or cyber did not stop him one bit, although he dabbles in it in his personal life. So, but he did. He just jumped right in. He was that leader we needed, and he's been a fantastic military deputy for the J6, as well as he's built fantastic relationships across the staff. And so I can't thank you enough for that. It really has been a pleasure and an honor to have you on our staff. And he's also been the first time we've had an Army, really on the staff in the front office here too. So it's fantastic bringing a different service perspective into the J6 as well. And so no, it's a bittersweet time, after 30 plus years of service, but we know, just the type of man you are, right, and the family that you have behind you, you're going to succeed in anything you decide to do. And we wish you guys all the best as you transition to the next chapter of your lives. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as General Hayworth presents the Legion of Merit Medal to Colonel Dismer and remain standing for the publishing of the retirement order. Attention orders. Citation to accompany the award of the Legion of Merit Medal to Colonel Paul D. Dismer. Colonel Paul D. Dismer distinguished himself in the performance of outstanding service to the United States as Military Deputy Director, Command, Control, Communications, and Cyber Systems Directorate, United States Transportation Command, while assigned to the United States Army Military Surface Deployment and Distribution Command, and in other positions of increased responsibility from 7 July 2017 to 30 June 2022. Colonel Dismer's unwavering leadership was instrumental to the success of organizations in which he served, and his service to the nation in answering the call of duty has been truly above reproach. His achievements, dedication, and exemplary performance culminating in 34 plus years of distinguished military service, are in keeping with the highest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the United States Army Materiel Command, and the United States Army. Please remain standing for the publishing of the retirement order.
Publish the retirement order.
Attention to orders. Special order number 286, TAC 1317, Colonel Paul D. Dismer, effective 30 June 2022. You are relieved from active duty per Army Regulation 600, TAC 8, TAC 24, and assigned to the retired reserve in the grade of colonel by order of the Secretary of the Army. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. At this time, Colonel Dismer will be presented his certificate of retirement. The certificate reads, "To all who shall see these presents, greetings. This is to certify that Colonel Paul D. Dismer, having served faithfully and honorably, was retired from the United States Army on the 30th day of June 2022. Signed, James C. McConville, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff." We will now present Colonel Dismer with a certificate of appreciation from the President of the United States. It reads, "Certificate of Appreciation for service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America. Colonel Paul D. Dismer, I extend my personal gratitude and the sincere appreciation of a grateful nation to you for your patriotic service to our country. Your bravery and dedication in our armed forces helped protect your fellow Americans during a critical moment in our history and contributed to a world of greater security and growing prosperity. Your devotion to duty, honor, and country, in keeping with the long traditions of the finest military in the world, embodied the American ideal of selfless service. Our nation owes you an incredible debt. Your commitment and the example you set will inspire future generations to service with pride and to keep our country secure. You represent the best of our nation, and I join our fellow Americans in saluting your honorable service. I wish you happiness and success in your next chapter. Signed, Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States." Additionally, as a reminder of his faithful service to our country, Colonel Dismer will now be presented with the United States flag from the Department of the Army. Mrs. Dismer, will you please join your husband? Every retiree receives a special retirement pin as a memento to their active duty service. At this time, we'd like to ask Mrs. Dismer to place the pin on Colonel Dismer's lapel to symbolize his transition from active duty to retired status. The pin stands as a testament of his service to our great nation. To all who shall see it, know that Colonel Dismer has met all challenges set before him and has served our country with pride, honor, and dignity. Every successful member knows and understands the value of the contributions of their family to the member's career, especially the efforts of the spouse. General Hayworth will now present Mrs. Dismer with a spouse certificate of appreciation, which reads, "Certificate of Appreciation to all who shall see these presents. Greetings. This is to certify that Ms. Joylyn V. Dismer, on the occasion of the retirement of your spouse from the United States Army, has earned grateful appreciation for your own unselfish, faithful, and devoted service. Your unfailing support and understanding helped to make your spouse's lasting contribution to the nation. Signed, James C. McConville, General, United States Army, Chief of Staff. At this time, will Paul Jr. and Laura please join your family on stage? In recognition of your support to your father, we will now present each of you with a certificate of appreciation. The certificate reads, Paul Dismer and Laura Dismer, on the occasion of the retirement of your father from active duty with the United States Army, you have earned grateful appreciation for your unselfish, faithful, and devoted service. Your understanding and patience in enduring your father's many absences and family's many moves underscores your selfless service and sacrifice to the nation. Throughout it all, your continued and uncomplaining support reflected your boldness, responsibility, adaptability, and tolerance. Your unfailing support and understanding helped to make possible your father's lasting contribution to the nation. Signed, Heidi Hoyle, Major General, United States Army, Commander, Military Surface Deployment and Distribution Command. Thank you, Mrs. Dismer, Paul Jr., Laura, and General Hayworth. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce for the very first time Colonel Paul D. Dismer, United States Army, retired. Colonel Dismer will now present flowers to his wife, daughter, mother, and aunt, and will present gifts to his father, son, and uncle. Following the gift presentation, Colonel Dismer, the floor is yours.
You gotta hold it, man. You gotta hold it. Don't lose it. Yeah. Whew, wow. It's been a long time coming, I promise. It won't take more than 2 hours. I do have a paper to keep me on track, so don't feel bad. And it's not as long as it looks.
You were only going to be in 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's true. I did say that. First, I want to thank all the senior leaders and all the guests that have arrived today. I really appreciate all the support right here. General Hoyle, thank you for attending the ceremony. And thanks for everything you did getting me this last job. It was great. Great way to end. Mr. Hurley, I appreciate you coming. And all the fellow directorates and deputies that I've served with, at least in SDDC and in TRANSCOM. It really means a lot seeing the folks come here today. So appreciate working with you, Kurt, Lynn, Debbie for sure, and Melissa back there. I see it, but I appreciate everyone coming. I told most of my folks in TRANSCOM thanks. Ms. Hahn, what do you think? Laura, can she sing? I do want to thank the ushers, the proffer, Sergeant Hooten, Uncle Perez, Oz, and the team in the back in AV that's doing this. Chaplain Sebic, as always, a great job. You didn't bring any beer though, so anyway, I was looking forward to that. I do want to thank B and Barb, the executive assistants who also helped put this together, and Senior Borden who helped with the script and the programs and just help bringing all the logistics together. I'm a logistics officer in the signal world, but Now I'm a signal officer temporarily until today. And then I'm back to being a logistician, but it's been a really great time. And then Laura, great rendition of the national anthem, really do. It was really great. You're going to do well. Well, like Joy said, it's been a short 4 years. My time in the Army is up. My enlistment contract is done. It's time to go. So it does seem like yesterday when I was just a private first classing at Fort Knox, Kentucky in the winter, and with the Red Dog platoons, we're first platoon. Just imagine how you remember that stuff, right? And I know when the assignments were being handed out at the end of AIT, Advanced Individual Training, they asked everybody, what's your next assignment? I'm going to Germany, I'm going to Korea. That was kind of the two things people wanted. They didn't want Fort Polk and they didn't want Fort Drum for some reason. But when they came up to ask me, I would proudly stood up and said, I'm going to Fort Leavenworth, because I was a National Guard soldier. I knew I was going back home. So needless to say, I didn't realize how fate was going to turn on me, and I ended up going active duty. But it was a really interesting time. As you know, General Hayworth's already repeated that I was going to Nicholls State University in Thibodaux, Louisiana. We referred to it as Harvard on the Bayou. But I came back from boot camp, and like she said, I needed a reason. I was working 3 jobs trying to make ends meet. And I saw my brother, John, who's just retired. I saw him in the ROTC program. In fact, he's the one who first got me to run 2 miles, actually run 2 miles in time. And I saw a couple of my friends that had joined the ROTC and talk about it. And then I said, well, I'm in the Guard. I see him in the S&P program. It looks like a good deal. I need the money. So I took it. My friends got out, by the way. They didn't stay in as officers. They just quit the program at the end, but I did finally stay in it and become an officer. So that's kind of how I got on track to go active duty. But it was a great time, an interesting time, a part of my life. And it also was the time when I met Joy. And like I say, she's been with me on this tour for the entire time. So it's been a great tour. I've had a lot of great soldiers under me. The ones that really come to mind are my drivers, who really kept us safe downrange. That was Griffith, Everett, had a Sergeant Flores, Dotson. Those soldiers were outstanding. But we're only as successful as the soldiers that we have the privilege and honor to either lead or serve with. And this nation has the greatest soldiers in the world. No kidding. And truly, I've been blessed to be able to be a part of it. So I'm really going to miss that. I do have some folks I want to highlight, especially on the NCO Corps. First, he's not here today. He might be listening online. Was my first platoon sergeant, Sergeant Brian Johnson, and his wife Dee Dee. He really, I was just a green lieutenant when I first got in there, taking over the platoon. We were on a mission, and I learned quickly when he knew I wasn't giving clear and concise guidance as a leader. Because I was given a mission, we're going to do an assault across an objective, and it's important your platoon sergeant who controls the 60 machine guns, I don't think they still exist today, but at that time, the pigs, we called them, the platoon sergeant controlled those, and they fire the rounds in front of your feet as you go across the objective, and as you go across the objective, he's supposed to move the rounds so you don't get shot, right, by your own team and move them. So you really entrust your platoon sergeant to make sure that happens. So anyway, I gave some guidance. He came back to me, and I knew when I didn't give clear, concise guidance, when he would go, "Sir, I just got my GED yesterday. Can you tell me what you meant by this?" And I took that to heart, that you have to give clear and concise guidance. So I really thank Sergeant Johnson and his wife. Sergeant Hislop was an NCO that I got from the maintenance team, inspection team. I don't know if they still do maintenance inspections today, but the divisions have these teams that go around and they'll pull you over and check your PMCS out. But at that time, the Army had just gotten computers, and we started creating the 5988 ECHO, which is the maintenance form. I didn't know how to read that thing. I was barely knowing how to write a 2404 form, for those that remember, right? But he did teach me. He taught me what right looked like on maintenance, taught me everything I knew about maintenance. That's why my sergeant major couldn't BS me on maintenance, because I knew. But he was a great asset. My first sergeant, Sherry Jackson, she was a POL and water NCO. I was just a quartermaster officer in the supply and service. We both got the 229 Field Service Company, taking over a laundry and bath. But that unit, the equipment was old. The soldiers had low morale. People were always using them to go to the field. But the problem was they didn't they just couldn't support it. So her and I had to change them around. We did. She showed me how to take care of soldiers, how to get those morale back. I worked hard to get them new equipment and get the equipment. I showed those bags to the congressional district delegates. I'm surprised they didn't get fired that day because truly there was water shooting out of those things. And one of my soldiers stuck a stick in one of the holes and water was coming out of the stick. But I wanted them to know that this was on SAT for the United States military. And needless to say, I ended up getting new equipment. I didn't get fired. So I dodged the bullet there. And I also learned how to do laundry for 3,500 soldiers in a week. So don't complain about doing laundry. If you get the mission to do laundry, try doing 3,500 in a week. Command Sergeant Major Brown, he was the Special Troops Command Sergeant Major. When we were downrange, our battalion commander got relieved. But before getting relieved, there was an investigation. He was away from us. So it was basically myself and a buddy of mine, another major. He was the XO at the time. He became the commander. I became the XO, the SPO, the G3. I was everything. But he really, as a sergeant major, battalion sergeant major, kind of handheld the two majors and make sure that we didn't screw too much up. And we really appreciate the support and guidance and mentorship that sergeant major gave us. And he's passed away just a couple of years ago, but he really touched us, and he's always in the back of my mind. And anytime I did something wrong or that he didn't agree with, that he might have given other guidance to, he would storm into my office, take off his glasses, and go, "Sir, we got a problem." And Sergeant Major, calm down, sit down, let's talk about it. What's the problem? And then we'd work it out always. But he was a great professional, great NCO. I'm going to take a minute. I have to acknowledge Command Sergeant Major Ian Griffith, retired from TACOM, but Sergeant Major, but he was my battalion Sergeant Major first. There's other generals out there that had him as a Sergeant Major, but was his first. And so it stops there, right? The rest were just lucky. But he was pace setter 7. We called ourselves the pace setter, and we set the pace. And when we went downrange, and his wife Vipka, what a great command team. Great NCO at the time. They're both retired in Texas, but great. Joy and I always loved seeing messages from Vipka and keeping you straight. Yeah. Look, we did everything to keep our soldiers safe downrange, and we did everything to make sure our customers were supported. Safety was first, to try to make sure convoys going out were correct, and that the customers were supported. But even when Sergeant Major thought I was crazy, they were going to split up the logistics from what we were doing in Taji area, and they were going to take away, units were going away, other units were going to pick up support. We were going to take over the north, but they were going to give our unit, the units we were currently had to somebody in the south. Well, I fought to keep, no, we didn't want to bust up the band. I had a great staff. Major DeGillowitz, our XO, was doing an awesome job running the operation down in the south in Taji, and I could manage both. And I really fought. The commander, Colonel Phelps, was about to take away those units and give them to somebody else. But you're only going to do this for 4 months. But I told him, no, we don't want to do that because it just causes too many other headaches. Let's simplify the plan. We'll take over. We can put the processes in place to make sure we do this right. And we did. But Sergeant Major, it was like, oh, what are we getting ourselves into? And then we went up north, took over those logistics operations, and those logistics operations were really screwed up. We had more problems. In fact, I went to a meeting one time with Sergeant Major after we took over to go see General Wentz, and Sergeant Major goes, "Well, sir, I'll see you later, maybe." And needless to say, General Wentz was concerned about the problems. I said, "Sir, we walked into a hornet's nest. We did not see this coming." But I said, "Give me a week and we'll fix it," and we did. And so it was a great. After that, we were on board. We were back to rocking and rolling what we thought was correct. But the thing about Sergeant Major is he's a Cowboys fan. Okay, I'm a Saints fan. Now, I'm downrange the year the Saints were going 13-0 that year with Drew Brees, right? And then all of a sudden, the next game was the Cowboys. So we wake up in the morning, the game's finishing, and all of a sudden, lo and behold, my Saints lose to the Cowboys. There's nothing like, after that game, we had to jump in a convoy and head north. Now look, I'm in the infantry. We know radio silence. We know how to keep radio silence. Now, Sergeant Major, how about them Cowboys? How about Sergeant Major, the enemy's out there. We got to look for, hey, how about those Cowboys? Your team could have blocked that field goal. You had a chance. I mean, that's kind of relationship we had downrange, but there's nothing worse than being in a couple-hour convoy listening about the Cowboys. Needless to say, well, we also had a bet the loser had to raise the other one's flag up on the flagpole. So there I was, raising the Cowboys flag up after that game on a Cowboy, him with a big smile on his face. However, then we had the Saints go play in the Super Bowl. Cowboys weren't in here, sorry, they didn't go all the way. The thing about that is we were going out checking convoys that night when the game started. Saints weren't doing too well against the Colts. And so our major's like, yeah, sorry, sir, it's not going to happen this year. And, we were allowed a 2-beer limit. We finished the convoy. We had our first beer after halftime. All of a sudden, they come out there, and Sean Payton calls that onside kick in the Super Bowl. And then I'm telling you, there were crimes being committed underneath that pile. But the Saints came up with the football. At that moment, when they kicked it, you saw Major on my second beer, he'll tell you, half my beer spilled. I could not believe the guts of that call, and I lost half a beer. So I only had a beer and a half that year. But we won the Super Bowl, and I couldn't be more excited. But Sergeant Major had the drivers come around trying to take away my weapon and ammunition because I was doing celebratory fire. So it was that kind of relationship. And then the other thing with Sergeant Major is when we checked on convoys every night, it was all about we wanted to make sure that they all did the proper battle drills to get ready for that convoy, and that they were really ready before they left out the gate, and that they didn't do anything crazy. But Sergeant Major has a favorite song that we listen to, and it's from the movie Euro Trip called Scotty Doesn't Know. I won't go into lyrics, but we'd go around, driving around, all of a sudden we hear Scotty doesn't know, and there were a lot of times we had a lieutenant run over their weapon. We had all kind of weird things happen down that range, and but he's right, Scotty doesn't know. Well, that comes true. I'm not going to talk about the time I got us stuck in the middle of an impact range in the middle of Iraq, because at times Scotty didn't know. But I made a decision to go a direction, and it did not work out well. But anyway, Sergeant Major Griffin, really, truly appreciate you. The best battle buddy I had as a battalion commander. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. And those drivers were awesome. I also want to thank Ms. Presided here, Trish. She was my family readiness senior advisor for the battalion. She made sure all the FRG, family readiness groups, were ready to go while we were deployed and took care of it. We became great friends at that time. She worked for me. After that, we stayed in touch, and we've been great friends ever since. And her and her husband, John, even though he's a Georgia fan, it's been a great asset. She's been to a lot of our events, and thank you for your friendship and time, even after you worked for me. So thank you. The other Sergeant Major I want to mention is Command Sergeant Major Jose Castillo. Sergeant Major, I don't know if I can talk about this. And so in the 10th Sustainment Brigade, I was in charge, and we lost 2 soldiers that day. And I still remember their names. Sergeant Daniel Rodriguez and Sergeant Jose Reyes. I'd been through Iraq. We had hundreds of thousands of convoys, and just sometimes the enemy gets a vote. But Sergeant Major was allowed me to keep me going during that time to make sure that the unit stayed on track, did the mission it was supposed to do, and get through that event. But that's probably the only regret I have, is losing those 2 soldiers. But I want to thank him personally, because he got me through that time and showed me you have to be a leader at that time, but it still doesn't hurt any less. Sergeant Major Burden Rivera and the rest of the Sergeant Majors that I had under me, they also were able to mentor me and keep me on track, so I really do appreciate all the NCO leadership that I've had. On the officer side, my IOBC got me straight was Captain Arata. There was a Captain Stearns who's a lieutenant. I know you don't know these people, but they just need to be acknowledged. There's a Captain Jim Dabrowski and Biggiotti who were entrusted me as their executive officers, and they taught me how to be a commander, and they also allowed me to do my job as an executive officer. Colonel Pete Haas, who was the battalion commander of the 49th Movement Control Battalion, he showed me what it was to be a battalion commander, how to do it right, and to push the envelope. I don't think we're the only battalion that's done its own ceremony out on a parade field by ourselves, broken down that level. Usually that's done at a higher level, but it was he really we did it all, and he had big dreams, and we did it, and that's where I learned how to dream big. Colonel Reed, Sergeant Major knows who I'm talking about. What a great officer. He let us do our thing in logistics and gave us the support we needed. If I needed somebody replaced, I'd call him up. Well, what do you think? I need him replaced. Okay, he's gone. That's the kind of person he was. Colonel Larry Phelps. Some of you may know Colonel Phelps. He was after Colonel Reed's brigade left, we fell up under the Colonel Phelps's brigade, and he's the one who approved me taking over the rest of the logistics operations. His board operations had our unit split up on the board, and I thought, this is going to hurt those soldiers. It's going to hurt. It's just going to mess too many things up. And when everybody else was saying no, he listened to me and forgave us yes, and we were successful. And I told him we were going to be successful. And so I really do appreciate his mentorship. And I did get an email from him the other day. I do appreciate Colonel Walker giving us the support we needed. We needed some extra manpower to fix the problems we had in the north, and he was there to do that. I want to thank General, now retired, he's General retired, Kurt Ryan, and his wife Jennifer. A great, great individual. After battalion command and all those, taking care of all those logistics issues, making sure soldiers were safe, you know, you get burnt out. After a while, command, you can only do so much for so long, and then your body starts kind of reacting to it. So I was a little bit burnt out, but I had to get the next job. Well, Colonel Ryan called me up on the phone. He says, Colonel Dismer, I want you to become my deputy commanding officer, 10th Sustainment Brigade. But before you accept, I want to make sure it's right, because I know you just got back from deployment, and we're deploying this summer. And make sure it's right for your family. The minute he was cared about my family at that point, when he said that, I said, I'm in, let's go. And so then he asked me, okay, you're still in battalion command. Can you come up and do this mission rehearsal exercise at Fort Hood, Texas, which is their validation exercise? So I said, well, let me check. I got confirmation I could do it. So I went TDY to Fort Hood. I got there a day, met the staff, met the senior mentor, and then Colonel Ryan at the time goes, hey, I'm going TDY for the next week or so. So the next day I show up to the exercise when Sir Drill, there's a senior mentor who's supposed to be evaluating him. My boss is TDY. I don't know anybody of these people and what their strengths and weaknesses are, but that quickly got me into the seat, and that's the reason he did it as the deputy. So he really showed me a lot. Talk about a person with a lot of energy. If I had to do one more warrior challenge with him. I've climbed a mountain. I've done a marathon on Bagram Air Base. Running around Bagram Air Base 8 times is not any fun, I'm telling you. But what a great time, and I appreciate his support. He also got me into SDDC. I asked to come back. He brought me into SDDC and made me his plans officer. So it was a great time. And I had a great time in the G5 and working with all the SDDC directorates. General Fogg, a quiet mentor. You may know General Fogg. He's a kind of a low-key person in voice, but he knows his logistics, and he knows what he wants. The reason I knew he entrusted me was one night we were planning the Mosul counterattack logistics plan. We had to brief it the next morning to the JTF commander how we were going to support the logistics. And he comes in my office about 11 o'clock at night before I was about to leave, and then the chief of staff was in there. Him and I, Jim, were talking, Jim Hooper. And he comes in here and he goes, he's upset. I've never seen this man upset. He was totally upset. Well, what had happened was our support operations section, who was working on the plan, and with all his notes, shredded his plan. You're the commander and your plan just got shredded. They didn't mean intentionally to do it, but it just happened. And he was so mad at the section, he went to Jim and I said, I got to brief this thing at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need the plan. And so Jim and I spent that night writing the plan, at least the initial part of the Mosul counterattack. And it was great. It really came out well for that many hours. We refined it, of course, after that, but he was able to brief. But the trust he gave us to write that plan, he went off to bed. He said, I'm going to meet up with you at 5 o'clock in the morning, review it, and then I'm going to brief it. And it worked out well. But he was still a great mentor, and I appreciate that. General McBride, who kept me as his chief of staff. I didn't screw up too bad as the chief of staff, so he kept me on. And then I do want to thank General Farman and General Ryan for their mentorship here at SDDC and pushing the envelope. And then General Hall, I really want to thank you again for allowing me to come over to the J6. It's always weird having an extra colonel. It's always good to have an extra colonel, but it's never easy to deal with that situation sometimes. And I appreciate you allowing me to come over. And then General Hayworth, I do appreciate you taking this logistician and trying to understand cyber. And I'm telling you, one of the first things she gave me to work on was this cyber readiness inspection. I just did a job interview. Have you ever been tasked with something you didn't know what you were doing on? That was the issue. That was it. And but because of the professionals in the organization, and we have a lot of good people there, we were able to be successful in that inspection. And all I did was help just try to shape it. But the folks made it happen. But ma'am, again, thank you for officiating the ceremony. What a way to go! I told her, what a way to go out in a joint environment, right? You've done your whole Army's Army, then now I'm in a joint world. in having her. So I asked her to do it. I know she was going to be a little hesitant about doing an Army retirement ceremony, but thank you. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with the family. First, Uncle Ken and Aunt Nancy, thank you so much for coming. You always support our events. You've been to several of our events here, and we try to reciprocate when we can. But thank you for making the distance and trip. It's a pleasure. We love you, and thank you for coming. To my brothers, John. See, John's the signal officer, and I'm working in the signal. I don't know how this works, but and then Mike, and then James. If you understand where I get sarcasm, when you grow up with 3 other brothers, you have to fend for yourself. So that's where the sarcasm comes in a lot of times, just because it's now instinct based on growing up. But they all inspire me, and I talk to them all the time. And they're off on their own careers, and it's been great. And I love them dearly. I want to recognize Joy's family. Most of them are not with us anymore. She's the baby of the family. Especially the Diane, George, and Liz, who recently passed away. But I know Shelley and Russell may be watching today. I want to thank them all for their support, and they are missed dearly. It was a great extended family that I have from Joy's side. I got along with all of them great. I want to thank Joy's mom and dad. They're not here with us either. They passed away just recently. But LJ and Joyce Vickner, they always supported me in this effort. I took their baby girl away from them, like after we got married, almost that month. Brought her over to Germany, that far away. It's the first time she's ever been really away from home. So imagine when you went to your first. It's like me when I first went to band camp. You're all by yourself, right? Yeah, it's true about band camp, by the way. But they always supported us. And Joy's mom and I had a special relationship. There's nothing I couldn't talk to her about that. And sometimes we'd have some doozies. But we do miss them tremendously, and we love them. But I know that they're here with us, not physically, but spiritually. And I just want to say thanks to my parents, my mom and dad. You've always inspired me. You showed me it was okay to take risks. And you show me that family is the most important thing. In the end, it's all about family. And I've tried to make you proud by example all the time. And I just want to thank you for all the support on this journey. And I'm glad you're still with us to do that. But I really do appreciate all the support. It means a lot to Joy and I. Thank you. To my kids, Paul and Laura, we couldn't be more prouder than you. You didn't ask for this journey, but unfortunately, you were along the journey. The good news is you're now part of a group, a special group of folks in this country, of kids known as Army brats. Okay, you just got to wear that as a badge of honor, because there's a lot of kids that don't get that experience. Your mom didn't have that experience. She never left home until I took her away at the time. But now you know what it is to move around, and you're more resilient for it, I hope. But we are so proud of you, what you've done. You've been great kids growing up. We didn't have that many problems with you, and you're great young adults. And continue on. Okay, thank you. And then to my wife, Joy. Yes, I'm starting to wrap up. Our 4-year journey is coming to an end, babe. I told you we'd end in 4 years. It's just been 34 versus 4. But you've been with me on this entire journey, and I love you so much for it, baby. All the sacrifices you made. I don't know how you did it when I was deployed, trying to hold down the family, the efforts. I know you had a lot of support, but it has truly been a pleasure. I made the right decision marrying you. I'm glad I actually called that day from that delivery. I was Uber before it was Uber. But I do love you dearly, sweetheart. And to reward you on that, you and I are going to take a trip to Hawaii by ourselves. Not the kids, but just you and I. So that's a small token of appreciation. She didn't know about this, but... Huh?
Are you going to bring her back?
I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah, I took her away from that little small, Morgan City was a small town, and just ripped her away. I dropped her off in Germany. I picked her up from the plane, brought her to the apartment, said, here's the apartment, here's the keys. I'm going on maneuvers exercise for 3 weeks. Oh, by the way, call Dee Dee if you need anything. And the commissary is right out the window. So it was that was her indoctrination into the Army, truly. And the reason I knew I had to keep her is when I came back, she was actually still there. The phone bill was pretty high, but she was okay. But baby, thank you so much. I appreciate you for this time. Okay. Well, my 4 years are up. It's been a great ride. My last assignment is Fort Living Room, so now I'm actually going to go to Fort Living Room. I appreciate all the support throughout my career and help. And like I say, it's been a great ride. And I just want to say this is Colonel Dismer signing out.
Thank you and congratulations, Colonel Dismer. Please remain standing for the playing of the Army song. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's ceremony. Please join Colonel Dismer and his family for a receiving line and reception. Thank you for attending and have a great day.